To uncertainty in our lives? How do we respond to the unknown? How do we respond to that sense that ultimately we are powerless in and of ourselves? We are looking at certain psalms for uncertain seasons. Today, I want us to revisit a bit more thoughtfully the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. When times are uncertain, we might experience two of the things mentioned in the 23rd Psalm. The first is, yea, though I walk through the valley of deepest darkness, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I walk through this dark, dark valley. Many of our viewers walk through dark valleys, which is the impetus for them to watch. Sometimes we just keep going right by devotionals until we're in a season where, you know what, I need to revisit my faith. I need to revisit my belief. So many of you watching are in a dark valley. That's part of this uncertainty. When it's dark, you don't know what else is there. I'm sitting by a oleander that went all the way to the ground. I've trimmed it now. But at night, some animal was making sounds in there. Because it was dark, we couldn't see. So we didn't know what kind of animal was in there. So we face the valley of the shadow of darkness, the valley of the shadow of death. A second uncertain moment in the 23rd Psalm is in the presence of mine enemies. There are those things in life, sometimes people, sometimes systems, sometimes situations, medical diagnoses, mental health issues, etc., that seek to destroy us in the presence of mine enemies. When we think about certain psalms for uncertain times, uncertain moments, we can think of the uncertainty of darkness and the uncertainty of being in the presence of things that can hurt us. Not only things that can hurt us, but things that intentionally, maliciously, purposefully attempt to hurt. In the valley of the shadow of death and the table prepared in the presence of our enemies. When we reflect on the certainty, though, of the psalm in these uncertain type moments, we're able to see that God is cool with us going through the darkest valley. He doesn't say, yea, though you detoured me around life's darkest valley. It doesn't say, yea, though you had a delay and gave me a pilot car to go through the darkest valley. It says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Notice in the psalm, it says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down. Referring to God, he, the third person. But it's in the dark valley that the psalmist shifts from the third person to the first person. It says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. It's often in those darkest moments that we sense God as you. We sense God as the person he is. We sense his especially close nature. God is closest often when the path is darkest. Now, he's here when the path isn't as dark, but we don't have often the sense that he's there. We don't often have that abiding awareness of his closeness. Then, when we come to in the presence of mine enemies, notice that our certainty isn't damaged by the darkness. We have a certain God in the darkest of moments. We have a certain closeness of God in the darkest moments. But we also have that in the midst of great enemies. My notes say the table prepared in the presence of the enemy is a defiant image of sufficiency and dignity in the midst of ongoing threat. It's nice to have a place where you feel there is no threat. Everything is safe. I have a sense of control. I have a sense of safety. I have a sense of resilience. At the same time, in this passage, you're in the presence of your enemies. They could easily attack. They could easily say, all right. And God's saying, nah, those enemies over there, let them be. We're just going to eat right here and have a nice dinner. And the brain could easily be reflecting and imagining and catastrophizing, we could say, about what the enemy might do. But the table is set anyways, even though the enemies are still present. God sets a table even in the midst of chemotherapy. God sets a table in the midst of court proceedings. God sets the table in the midst of depression. God, in my case, God sets the table in the midst of post-traumatic stress disorder. The table is set, and we can get our eyes on the enemy, or we can get our eyes on the fact that we're at the table with the Lord. So Psalm 23 is not about avoiding the darkest valley. It's not about destroying all our enemies. Psalm 23 is about God sustaining us and dignifying us in the midst of the dark valley, in the midst of being surrounded by enemies. How long does this last? It says, for the length of days, however long your life is, this is how long God's grace lasts. Or it says, I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. But forever kind of sounds like after we die, which is true. But there is an emphasis, I think, in the Hebrew on right now. As long as I'm alive, God will be with me. And I've noticed that we can reimagine our future in moments like these. For example, I can walk and talk, and a couple of days back I hurt my back. I couldn't get out of my chair on my own. Paula had to help me, put me in a chair with wheels, wheel me off to the emergency room. I thought, you know, my whole life could be in a wheelchair from now on. There's the possibility of that. And at first that was discouraging, but you know what? By the way, I'm still doing great, walking and leaping and praising God. I can reimagine life in that dark valley. I can reimagine life even in the midst of that concept of the presence of an enemy. So Psalm 23 helps us reimagine a resilient life in the midst of life's darkest valleys and in the midst of enemies, prepared, thoughtful, intentional, maliciously ready to attack. And so, brothers and sisters, if you're ready to reimagine your future, maybe you've had a stroke and your physical capacities are different. Maybe you have an experience that you wish you could change, but you can't. Maybe there's an economic reality that you're not able to overcome. We can reimagine our future. We can create a new preferred tomorrow because we know that in the darkest of valleys, that's when he's closest. And we also know that in the presence of enemies, he says, don't worry about it. Let's sit down and eat together.